The very first punch he like throws, I'm like moving and I'm in the mid-air like gliding back, but he hit me with his right hand and it felt like I was floating for days.
Stepping into a boxing ring can be a daunting experience for sure. At 43 years old, professional boxer Miguel Gallegos may be in the best shape of his life. Find out how he rose to the pro ranks and what keeps him motivated on this captivating episode of A Tale to Tell. All right, I'd like to welcome my guest, professional boxer Miguel Gallegos, to the podcast today. Hi, Miguel.
How's it going, Don?
Good, good. Thank you for taking the time to share your story with us. And, here you are, 43 years old, and you're still going at it.
Young at heart.
Hey, no, I admire the hell out of you. And, I've known you for 20 plus years. I've had the great pleasure of watching, I believe, 4 of your 7 pro fights, and have really enjoyed it. So
10.
10 total
10.
pro.
10.
I'm sorry. Okay.
10 or 11? 10. Yeah, 10.
Okay. Because you were 6-3 and 1.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So 6 wins, 3 losses, 1 draw. Okay. And we'll talk more about that. Before we get into that, I want to go back in time. Back to when you were a kid. What motivated you? How did you get started in boxing?
Well, I remember when I was younger, my dad, I remember him asking me if I wanted to box, and I was like, no. I think I was 5 years old, and I watched this fight on TV, and to this day, I do not know who this guy was, but the movement that he was doing, he was all over the ring. I was like, wow, if I would fight, I'd be fighting like this guy. He had this guy turn around in the ring, but I remember my dad would have people over, and they're like, because my dad used to box in the service.
Okay.
So, and people were like, when's he gonna fight? And I had no interest in it.
You were 5?
Yeah, and my dad never really even pushed it on me. But I used to watch fight. I used to go with my dad to these houses and we'd watch all these Sugar Ray Leonard fights. And
but you weren't interested at the time.
I just wasn't. I wasn't interested.
Yeah.
I just wasn't.
So what got your interest? How did your interest start building up?
Well, I don't. Well, in high school, I played all sports. Well, in my senior year, I didn't play anything. And then, I had the reputation, oh, look, there's Miguel, he's real bad, this and that. But no one had ever seen me fight, really.
Uh-huh.
Only selected people had seen me fight. Like, growing up as kids, we didn't have gloves. We used to wrap our hands with our flannel coats.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
And remember some of those guys would put the zippers and stuff, they could hit you. And we had that clear plastic tape, and it would cut you.
Oh, man.
But so I learned to duck real.
Sure.
Or, it's like, I'm not getting
Survival.
hit by that, so I learned how to slip.
Yeah.
But then I remember Yellow Front. I was at Yellow Front in the store, and I found these gloves. And I put those gloves on, and I was like, this is scary. Because it was a glove, but it was so small, and it was harder. It felt worse than...
Yeah, people think boxing gloves are soft, but they're...
No, and I was like, wow, this is dangerous. And so then we would just start... Me and the other kids, I grew up around, there was several kids in our neighborhood the same age as me, and so we would just do round robin stuff, and getting in there.
Okay, so this was, 18, 20?
No, this was when I was probably 10.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
but then
I had no interest in boxing.
Okay.
That was just, we used to play all sports, but I had no interest in fighing.
Okay, but you said your senior year you didn't do sports, and then
that's
is that
when
when you started kind of getting into the amateur?
Yeah, it's like, thing? I remember my dad hung a heavy bag up in the back, and I went to go hit it, and I shielded myself from him so he couldn't. He was really trying to see, and he's like, I can't see what you're doing. You're hiding from me. And it was so awkward, and I could tell. Even though I was new to it, I knew my balance was wrong. I could distinguish right then and there. I knew my balance was wrong. And whereas some people you can't. Like, you get people in the gym, they can't figure that out. Whereas you can see it on someone, like, man, do you feel off balance? So then it started progressing like that, and they just started training, and it took a while to get conditioned into it to the point where I felt I was ready to start competing in amateur boxing.
So with your dad, you said your dad had fought in the Navy a bit.
Air Force,
amateur.
Yeah, he was.
Okay. Was he pushing you to do it, or he was more encouraging you to do it?
No, not really.
Okay.
And even to this day, when I decide I'm going to fight, he always discourages it.
Oh.
But as of late, he's been, he'll discourage it at first. That's how he's always is. But then once he realizes I'm committed to it, he gets on board, and then he's that guy. You need to do this. You're not doing that. And he starts implementing things for me to do.
Well, and he's been in your ring for most, if not all, of your fights, correct?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and I know your dad, Art, great guy.
Yeah, he was.
So Miguel, how many amateur fights have you had? Did you have? Now you're not an amateur anymore, but around 40 or
Total, I bet you it was in a book registered with USA Boxing. I want to say I was like 21 wins and like 10 losses, something like that. But then see, back it was so hard in this area to get fights. So what these people they do, they put on these things called smokers, and it's not registered with USA Boxing.
Oh, okay.
So it doesn't go record in your book. So I mean, we'd drive to Gallup, and it's like I get there's no one my size. I'd be fighting guys that outweighed me by 30 pounds. It's like driving 4 hours and not fight and come back, or So I took whatever I get, and a lot of my amateur bouts, like my second amateur bout, I had two. It was my second amateur bout. I fought a guy that had like 30-something bouts. So I was always fighting guys with more experience.
Guys up, yeah.
But then again, I was a couple years older than them, so it equaled out. That's how the amateur, that's how they weigh those things in amateur boxing. Okay, he's older, but he has more fights. The experience, what he's experienced in life, it balances out, and that's equal matching. You don't want to be overmatched.
So I know you right now probably weigh 145, I don't know, whereabouts.
150.
Maybe 150, okay.
Yeah.
And I know you've gotten down into the 130s. Is when you were most of your fights in your amateur days like in the 120s and 130s? Where were they at?
132.
132,
And
okay.
I used to struggle to make weight. I wasn't hip on dieting.
Yeah.
And things like that.
That's no fun.
But I look at pictures of myself, I did look unhealthy.
Okay.
At that weight.
Okay.
Whereas last year when I fought, I dropped down to 100. I was 138, and I looked healthy.
Yeah, I would agree.
But when I was younger, I didn't look as healthy at that small weight.
Yeah. So, how does one go from amateur to pro? And how was that decision made? How old were you? How did that happen?
I didn't go pro till I think I was 27, I think.
Okay.
And I was down in Phoenix. At Madison Boxing Gym. Tyson used to train there. Mayweather. They had this restaurant. It's on Van Buren. And from Jake LaMotta, to Marvin Hagler to Holyfield, they all stopped in this place. And it was nothing to it. It was a dark gym. All I had was a heavy bag and a ring and a speed bag. Nothing fancy. Mm-hmm. And I remember I was there boxing. I moved down there. And my dad came down. My dad had come down, and I took him to that gym, and next thing you know, he signed me up to fight the following week.
Jeez.
And I ended up
Thanks,
winning.
Pop.
I ended up winning the Arizona State title. And then I had another fight scheduled. I'll tell this story. Then listen to this.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I won the Arizona State title. So it qualified. It was like an Olympic qualifier stage thing. So then I got to go to like a 4-state thing in Albuquerque where everybody who won will compete, and then from there you go to California, Colorado Springs. Well, I was there I can't remember the guy's name, Gene Tunney's gym down there in Phoenix, and I was the main event. And I'm like, who is this guy I'm fighting? The guy's name was Pepe Montoya, and I'm like, who is this guy? So the whole night I'm looking around trying to figure out who's warming up. Like, who am I fighting? Because normally you see him at the weigh-in in the morning. Because amateurs, you weigh in the same day.
Okay.
Whereas pros, you weigh in the day before. I'm like, I don't know who this is. So it's like, main event, here it comes. And I look and I see him, and I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, this is the guy I was talking to a couple weeks ago when I fought on a week's notice. And I'm talking to him. He was like a 4 or 5 time Golden Glove champion of Arizona.
Okay.
And he was getting ready to go pro. That was like my conversation with him.
Okay.
Well, he decided to have one more amateur bout before he went pro, and that was with me.
Okay. No
And
pressure.
Yeah, I'm like, what the? And I'm like, this guy was huge. He looked big. And so I'll get into that. If we can talk about something like that, about the weight, how these people cutting weight and the business of cutting weight in the pros. But I remember they played. Amateur boxing, they don't play music. Well, they played music for us walking out.
Both of
and
you.
Vasily Jirov was there. I don't know if you know him. He's a Olympic gold medalist.
Okay.
He was there. I remember I met him. And they played Eye of the Tiger for my music.
Hey.
I can't stand that song.
Nor
Nowadays.
can my wife.
So, but this what happened. I got in the ring, and we faced off. Instructions backed up. The very first punch he like throws, I'm like moving, and I'm in the mid-air like gliding back. But he hit me with his right hand, and it felt like I was floating for days. And I didn't remember anything. I didn't remember anything for the next couple rounds we had. It was a they had scheduled for, usually amateur bouts are only 3 rounds, but this was 4 rounds. And I didn't remember anything. And then I came to, but after the fight, I had so many people come up to me and say, "Man, I have never seen anybody box that guy like that." Even my dad came up and said, "That's the best I've ever seen you fight." I didn't remember shit.
How old were you?
I was 21.
Okay.
But I didn't remember none of it. But everyone was like just impressed with it. But that was one thing my dad said was the footwork. And that was one thing that place in Rodriguez camp, because they wanted me to go pro, and I didn't. But they push footwork. I went there for a month straight and didn't throw a punch.
Sure.
All I did was move.
Let me interrupt you just for a second and talk about footwork, because a lot of people think, and I'm certainly no boxing aficionado, even though I had the great pleasure of going sparring with you for a few rounds a few years ago, and I almost died. But most people think it's all predominantly upper body. But what do you have to say about that?
It just... No, you got to use sure, it's like that in UFC. And UFC, you use your entire body for defense. In boxing, you use your entire body for defense. You got to move your legs. If your footwork isn't right, your punches aren't going to be the trajectory of your punches. The force of it just not going to be up to par.
Sure.
So, but yeah, you got to get out of trouble. You got to move, man.
So Miguel, this guy basically was going pro. Did that fight, even though you lost it, you fought so well, did that take you into the pro ranks?
What do you mean, like
the one in Arizona?
So what do you mean it take me into the pro ranks? So
how
do you transition?
How do you transition from amateurs into pros?
You don't have to have any amateur experience at all. You just got to apply for a license.
Okay.
But they'll look at it. Each state is different, and like a state like Nevada, they're not gonna approve it. Like, oh, this guy has no amateur experience, and you're wanting him to fight pro this first fight against this guy. So no, we're not gonna sanction it. Denied. But sure, I remember when I did go pro, I was here at this casino, and the guy's name was Ben Fernandez. I remember him asking me, "Are you sure you really want to do this? I had to ask." And I looked at him like, "Yeah." It's like, what are you worried about? You're not getting punched. I go, I know exactly what I'm doing. I know what it's called for. I've been punched.
You've been around the block.
So it does help to have that amateur experience going into it for sure.
Yeah.
But there's really no transit. It's like UFC. You don't got to either. You can become pro like that.
So Miguel, you've had 10 fights, 6-3-1, right? So 6 wins, 3 losses, 1 draw. Out of those fights, what would you say is your most memorable fight, and why?
My second one against a guy named Marcus Brashears.
Mm-hmm.
Because
was that here in Colorado?
I remember because sparring, I had no sparring. I got 4 rounds of sparring, and it was with this guy that was my age at that time he was, this guy I fought, Marcus Brashears. It was his pro debut. Sure, it was my second pro fight, but it was his pro debut. But he had fought 20 times in 20 months.
Oh my goodness,
that's active.
Wow.
And so when we got in the ring, he was a guy from Texas, Gainesville, and I remember the first round we went at it, and his speed, he was just hard. He was harder, and But at the end of the first round, he was back against ropes, and he hit me with a right uppercut, and he swung out, and I fell against the ropes, and I went, and everyone thought I was swearing because I got punched and he broke my nose at the time. But no, the reason why I was so frustrated is because 3 minutes went by and I didn't figure anything out.
Oh boy.
I didn't, you know what I mean? I didn't figure anything out. Like, I just didn't read him. And that's why I yelled.
Sure.
I was so pissed off. And I went, and then next round, I remember, you can hear everything in the ring.
Yeah.
It's like, I talk to people and I'm like, didn't you hear me yelling at you? And like, no, I can't. It's so distorted. I mean, that's the difference, I guess, the levels. You can hear a Coca-Cola bottle. I even heard Tyson say it, and that's what he said. A Coca-Cola bottle rolling down the aisle. You can hear it, but you hear every little thing.
Yeah, everything's magnified.
I mean, that's how in tune you are. But sure, you got to be in tune here, but...
Those are external forces.
But so I fought to a draw with this guy.
Okay.
And, but yeah, I wish... I have his old man's card. Because I'd want to see that fight on video. I don't have that. Some of my fights I don't have on video, and that's one I'd like to see because I had a man up. I really did. I was up against. I was like, holy shit, man.
Well, you know, it's impressive. I've seen you come up for the last 20-some years, and I know you train in here in my place fit 24/7 sometimes. But I'm not just saying this to make you feel good. I mean, here you are at 43. I saw you fight last year in Albuquerque.
A year ago, almost to the date.
And took my oldest son down there. Enjoyed it thoroughly. I thought you did a stellar job. And I think you're fighting as well now as you were 15 years ago. That's just my opinion.
I know more now.
And you get in great shape. That's the other thing. I've seen you go from like 180 pounds down to 140 pounds, which people that and I've never lost 40 pounds. I've lost 20.
I was 201 pounds one time.
Were you really? And how tall are you?
6'3".
Yeah. How tall are you?
Like
5'8"?
5'6.5", 5'7".
Okay.
I've shrunken, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I think it's really admirable that you're still doing it, and I want to talk a little bit about that. What keeps you going?
I took like 7 years off, and I started training my nephew and a couple of the younger kids. And I was watching them, learn, and I'm like, man, my cousin's an athlete, he's playing college ball, and I'm like, I'm in better shape than him. And I was like, I got to do this. I have to do this. Because I will have regrets, and because I have a lot of regrets. But I was like, I have to do this, and so I know that's what. I did it to wake up my 2 kids and my stepson, like to give them something. I'd like, look, anything's possible. Look what I'm doing.
Yeah.
You've seen me down and out at home, not happy. Look at this, what I'm doing. Hopefully this wakes you up.
Good for you. I think it's fantastic. You're 43. How long do you foresee doing it?
Realistically, I think I could go through the next 44, and that's it.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind being a sparring partner. That's always been my goal, is to be a sparring partner in Vegas, and work with the client, because my expertise, I think, is training people. Like, I can watch fights and like, man, look at you're doing this, you're doing that. Because like when you're in the ring, you got someone yelling at you, throw more right hands, but in the ring you can't throw that right hand because but then when you watch it on film, you're like, gee, I could have thrown that right hand, but in the ring you can't, because that little bit of movement he's showing me is keeping me from doing it. It's just throwing it off. I can't throw that right hand because I can see he's going to throw a left hook if I do that.
Sure. Let's talk about that a little bit, the coaching scenario, because you coach kids right now, and quite a bit, right? I mean, how many hours a week are you spending coaching kids, would you say?
1, 2, 3, about 5-6 hours.
That's great. That's really great.
Yeah, we have a youth program, so I got different levels of kids, so that's what makes it hard. But I got to remind them, hey, Tom Brady has been playing football for 20 years. He throws the same pass, and when he completes it, it's still not good enough. So, like, that's one thing like, some of the fighters now, they do all these crazy things, but when you got guys like Mayweather, they do the basics. They master the basics.
Yeah.
They don't get nothing fancy. And then you hear all this I'm getting off point here, but you hear all this, oh, I'm an entertainer, BS. You're selfish. You have, that comes with the territory. Their main thing is to win the fight.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter how they do it, they want to win it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as far as, I don't know what you asked about coaching kids, but
yeah,
but I got different levels of kids, and that's what makes it kind of tough, and I got to remind them, it's reps, man. It's creating muscle memory.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think would be a great coach. I mean, I've seen you work with people in here. You've helped me do some different things, stuff that I carry over into working with some of the couple of people that have Parkinson's disease. What would be your greatest, although you may have just said it, greatest advice for kids that are wanting to take boxing? Don't do it. No, I'm kidding.
No, that's the one kid I called him the other day. I'm like, Alex, you got to get in here. I mean, I'm like, seriously, I mean, you need to get in here. I seen the talent you have, and do as I say, not as I've done.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Sure.
But I lost your train of thought.
It seems like boxing has become somewhat of a lost art, and obviously we're maybe that's just around here, but
people that say that really don't watch boxing, though. I mean, it's not. The fights are huge. Even now with the COVID, the fights are huge right now. What it is, I think, what's wrong with professional boxing is how it's advertised, how it's promoted.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, there's politics that's gone on since I was born. There is politics in boxing.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And depending on who's sanctioning the fights and where they're being held and what state it's in, and sure.
I've seen some fights, and you're like, is this thing, like, I watched De La Hoya and Mayweather, and De La Hoya should have tore him up. But the money's on Mayweather. So what happens if De La Hoya wins? And, I watched that, and it was weird. He never threw a right hand. He throws all these right hands short, except for the last round, he throws one, and he connects. And Mayweather kind of looked at him like,
Makes you wonder.
It does. Sometimes college athletes, I don't know.
So Miguel, tell me about some influences. Who are your biggest influences in boxing?
Well, I don't necessarily know influences such as like, how do I say it?
Pros or your dad or...
Well, there's styles that I mimic that I like admire more than most, and I got it down. I'm a Jack Dempsey fan.
Jack Dempsey, the Manasseh Mauler. That's over by where I grew up. That's in the southern end of the San Luis Valley, down in Manasseh.
It's wild as he fought it. They got the sign at the ranch and it said $50 in 1915. He made $50, but 4 years later he made $350,000.
Wow! And that's back in the 20s,
early 20s. That's a lot of money.
That's an unbelievable amount of money.
But yeah, Jack. I always like when he fought Jim Jeffries. How he broke 4 of his ribs, broke his jaw, knocked out like 3 or 4 teeth. I mean, that's wild.
Wow.
Those guys fighting back in the day. But as far as styles go, like influences, Costa Zoo. A lot of people don't know who he is. Costa Zoo, Julio Cesar Chavez, Rocky, and Mike Tyson are my influences. Rocky movies, and they all were inducted into the Hall of Fame the same year.
Oh wow!
Wow! But
so what is it? What are their methods, or what do you see in them that really?
Costa Zoo, he was like cheating within the rules. Dirty. He was a dirty fighter, but he did it within the rules. He would throw his low blows, or he would throw you to the ground. He'd do it a couple times because he knew he was going to get penalized until it got to progress to a certain point. And that's one thing that I admired. I'd like to take in. Just the toughness, and then he had Chavez, just the constant head movement, the boxer breaking people down, methodically breaking just round after round. That's the art of it. That's a when you break someone down like that, man. That I never necessarily been broken down. Sure, I've lost fights, but I've never been broken down. It's like the fights I've lost is because I lost them because I didn't do enough. But I can imagine how devastating that would feel on the your
consciousness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Man, I'm just not on that level. But then you had Tyson. I used to watch Tyson fights, but now Tyson drives me nuts. His story has been played so many times.
Sure.
And then you got Rocky.
Yeah. Rocky Balboa. Yeah, absolutely. No, that's I appreciate you sharing that. Everybody's got their own style, and you certainly have yours. One thing that I notice, and I'm certainly not a boxing aficionado, but you're capable, and I haven't seen this with a lot of boxers, of being ambidextrous.
Yeah,
I've seen you go
switch.
left and right and switch. Now, am I wrong, or do a lot of boxers do that?
They don't, and then when you hear announcers, oh, that means he's frustrated. No, it doesn't.
Because, I'm not saying you're as strong left as you are right, but you're very, in my opinion, very close. And I think that's fantastic, and that's got to completely throw people off their game when they're in the
It does
ring
because
with
the
you.
punches come from a different angle, and in fact, my next fights, if I do get some fights here, I'm fighting strictly left. I'll end up switching, but I'm gonna start fighting lefty, more lefty. Like my dad used to get upset, don't switch lefty until like third round or something. Don't switch right off the bat, But hey, if it presents itself to land a shot, you have to do it. You have to jump on it right then and there. That's like game plan. You have to have a plan for a plan. You have to be able to adjust on the fly
Absolutely.
quickly.
Yeah.
Because it is fast.
Yeah.
That's the
Absolutely.
thing. Pro boxing and amateur boxing, the punches and bunches. Professional boxing is slower, but it's faster. If that makes sense. It's slowed down, but it's fast. It's precise. And that, for instance, an example of that is the other night, Gervonta Davis fought Leo Santa Cruz. He threw 3 right hands when he should have just thrown one. He threw the one, he should have got out. Why he threw the other 2 is because it was like systematic, because he had been training. He was punching as if he was punching a heavy bag, whereas the other guy was figuring him out. And you notice that a lot of people, that's why some people don't transfer from amateur to the pros, because you can't hit that heavy bag the way you can a person.
Right.
You can't that heavy bag and throwing punches back. And that's just, some people just, that's what separates the elite from elite. That person's out thinking that person. He's just outsmarting him.
Yeah, there's a
He's
big,
not necessarily
big mental
outworking
game,
him.
right?
He's outsmarting him.
Yeah. Got to put the mental with the physical. Fantastic. Good stuff. Well, listen, Miguel, I could talk to you for hours. With these next couple of minutes, I want to, kind of wrap things up. I can't thank you enough for coming on board. You inspire and motivate countless people here in the Durango community and elsewhere. Albuquerque, I sat and watched last year's fight, and there's people even from Albuquerque that
I fought in February though too.
Oh,
I fought in February. I took a fight on 2 days' notice after that November.
Oh,
fight.
right, down in El Paso.
Yeah,
That's right.
They called me and 2 days' notice. I was like, let's do it. And the only reason why I was able to do it, I wasn't in condition I wasn't in sparring, fighting condition, but I had been lifting weights. I'd been here lifting weights for 3 weeks. And that's the only reason why I did it, because I knew my muscles were strong enough.
Yeah.
And
Well, you certainly don't look or act or box your age, whatever that means. To say 43, but honestly, I've only seen a few fighters in their 40s be even close to your kind of condition. So I really admire it. I think you're a warrior. The amount of discipline that you have is second to none. So I look forward to seeing what this year brings about, and I hope we can maybe get you back in here and we can discuss another fight. Maybe you might end up in Vegas. And,
that's what's, they called me a couple weeks ago to fight in Vegas on the undercard, and they ended up going with someone else because it was a guy's second fight, and I just had a little bit much experience. But we tried selling it. Look at his age, my inactivity. This guy was from Pennsylvania, but they opted to go with someone else.
Well,
so
you never know.
I've been saying, but yeah, that's I had 2 promoters call me. So, and that's the thing. The second I stop training is the minute they're gonna call.
Sure.
So
got to be ready.
Yes, for sure.
Well, again, thank you so much, and looking forward to seeing you around here and around town, and just stay in touch, and good on you for working with these kids.
For sure.
They're fortunate to have you as a coach.
Cool, man. Well, appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Miguel.
Thanks.
This podcast is brought to you by the popular books Wellness Toolbox 1 and 2. These books are available on Amazon as well as at local Durango, Colorado merchants. Purchase your copies today.